Ooh, okay. Hey everyone. I am really excited to share with you about the book, The Women Who Run with the Wolves, by storyteller and Jungian deep psychologist Clarissa Pinole Estés. Now, what I'm doing is giving an overview of the books from archaeology, anthropology, Jungian deep psychology, I feel like there's more, the goddess religion, to really understand what shifted in civilization that got us into the conundrum that we're in right now, which is based on hierarchies, poverty, and war. And if you follow me on Facebook, you know that I recently put up an article that was about Asherah, who was Yahweh's wife. There was a god and goddess counter connection in the Fertile Crescent before the Hebrew god annihilated her, murdered her, and got rid of all the tribes that believed in her and in her energy. And it is this God of war, the God of the Old Testament, that really is the psychology behind all of the ills of our experience. And Carl Jung, a deep psychologist, a deep psychoanalyst who really focused on the collective, meaning how we have shared opinions and beliefs. And from those shared opinions and beliefs, we have our reality. He predicted this time where the feminine would be coming back into embodiment. And the feminine is the archetype for emotions and matter, the materialization of our thoughts and our feelings. And it's really relevant for us to be looking into this right now because the war that we are approaching, especially with Uranus moving into Gemini, is reminiscent of other wars that we've had about every 84 years. And this one's really interesting because when you look at the role that the superpowers play, America is notably a thief. And the thievery that we had from World War II was how to make a nuclear bomb to take nuclear scientists from other world power. And now is quantum computing. And there's also an article from the White House about the ability to time travel through simulation in the quantum realm. And Iran might have to do with some quantum technology that maybe the US wants. And so the whole thing with war is always just this power play. Get to the moon as fast as you can, do this, like, just be the person that has all the power. And it comes back from the Fertile Crescent. And so it's no surprise that the war that we are currently approaching is in the Fertile Crescent as well. All that to say that if we actually tap in and we go above the dynamic of the red team and the blue team and what country in the Fertile Crescent that you're going to side with, if we can go above that into the root cause, the same way that we've done that for ourselves with our own inner work to know that we are the creators of our reality, we are responsible for our success, and we are also the reason why we're not able to accomplish something. If we apply that way of thinking about um, the world right now, then we can really move through this in a powerful way. And we can, especially because the next realm of ownership is quantum. That's thoughts and feelings. So we can go head to head with the true spiritual warfare that's happening, which is in the non physical space. And the way each individual does that to rise against the machine of the politicians and the world governments is that we actually get into our bodies and do the mental emotional work. So this is a really incredible time. And what I want to share with you from The Woman Who Run with the Wolves, especially if you're a boss babe, if you can get a lot of shit done, and if you are estranged from your dad, like that's a little cherry on top for how this will be effective for you. So the archetypes storytelling really helps us understand the human condition. And that's what archetypes are all about. And Carl Jung was like the man to bring primordial energy, astrological energy into commonplace discussions within the psychology sciences. And his work was about 100 years ago. And if you follow evolution astrology, it kind of follows along some of the similar planets that we've had and relationships that we've had with Neptune and Pisces recently. So Carl Jung, coupled with the storytelling of ancient with Clarissa, with her ancestors. Clarissa is an American, but her ancestry is from Europe and also South America. And a lot of her people, older people that she grew up with, were actually out in the farms picking our food. And the stories that they have really kept them centered on the human level, connected to their soul and the earth. And so it's very relevant for us to be reflecting on those words of wisdom because of what we are experiencing in the US with immigration, that we had changes where our political system actually welcomed undocumented farm workers into the country to whatever political play they were doing. So it was like a thing that like the government influenced, and then now you see what's happening. So there's so many things that don't make sense between us and the government, but that were also the root cause was the government. So anyway, so when she was talking about how her family was, you know, working in fields essentially, I was like, oh, isn't that funny? Because the ancient lands are the ones that are the least colonized the stories are, the more we can really understand the human condition. So she does that, and she also relates it to some of the very specific works of Carl Jung to really understand that we're dealing with the unconscious. We're dealing with the shadow when we don't like ourselves, when we have our projections and we blame other people, and then how we sabotage our own success. So it's a very, very good book. And there are many stories. It took her years and years, maybe even 2 decades, I think, to write. And I went through the book pretty quickly because I just got obsessed with wanting to know why we're in the position that we're in as humanity. And is this inner work really that we have to be the man in the mirror, that we have to be the change that we wish to see in the world? And so by the time I got to the story of La Llorona, then I was like ready to hear that story. And then that story changed my perspective completely. So that's the story that I want to share with you. And I also want to share it with you from the perspective that I have about Chiron. So Chiron is known as the wounded healer, and it is in everybody's chart. And the idea behind the wounded healer is that he has a wound. He's like half horse, half human in the Greek pantheon, and he had an injury that is perpetual. So he will never die. He will always have this issue that he has to work on healing. And when we relate that archetype into our chart, where that chart is placed or where Chiron is placed on our chart tells us where we are going to be having a perpetual struggle. This is where we're always going to have an issue. When I first heard this and that Chiron was in Taurus in the second house, I panicked and cried and cried and cried because I was like, Taurus represents physicality, the physical body. The second house represent resources, finances, your home. And I was like, oh my God. So I'm going to be in fitness, but I'm always going to be injured. I'm always going to be unhealthy. And I'm an entrepreneur and I'm always going to be broke. And that really made me sad and felt like there's no hope. Well, years went by, possibly even a whole decade went by, to then I heard a different, well, more than a decade, a different perspective on Chiron. It doesn't matter what the timeline is, but when I finally heard about Chiron in a different way, then I was like, oh my God, Chiron is actually where we fill in the gap, where the light actually gets to come through. And so you may have seen this thing about, I think it's Japanese pottery, and the Japanese pottery is that when a vase cracks and then you put it together, it gets sealed with gold. So you have all this beautiful design of the gold on the vase. So I started to think about the Chiron placement as that when we're able to work with this placement, we actually become magnetic, because in order for us to work with that placement and quote unquote heal, we have to do the inner work, the thoughts and feelings work. And when we do that inner work, we create safety within our nervous system, which relates to the inner child, that a lot of us have an abandoned inner child, an abandoned part of ourself that we had to get rid of in order to survive. And that's just the human conditioning to make it in society. No big deal, right? So I started to look at it like that. I was like, oh my God. So if you work on your Chiron placement and you create this safety within your body, which means that your thoughts and feelings are coherent, your brain and your heart are coherent, your quantum field of your aura is coherent. That's what makes you magnetic for the desires of your heart. That's what pulls people into you. So I was like, okay, cool. I love this. And I love how if we look at Chiron in this way, and apply it to our inner work with our inner child work and our reparenting, then it's like lightning speed that we can make our childhood make sense. Because a lot of us, especially women who are estranged from our dads, um, we we need help making our thoughts and feelings make sense. And that's what the inner work is, to connect with that inner child. So if we have suppressed emotions that we can't get to because we don't have language for them, because they were either too traumatizing or they happened at an age that was too young, the Chiron placement it helps us reparent as our adult self now, to look at the primordial energy, the archetype of the collective consciousness, the Carl Jung psychoanalysis, to then see, how do I feel, what do I think when I look at the meaning of this placement, and does that thought and feeling is it reminiscent of experiences that I had in my childhood? And then when you can see the two halves come together, you're like, oh my God, I actually needed these experiences in childhood in order to become something. Because if we don't have friction, if we don't have the experience of separation, then why incarnate? Why have a body in this dimension that is all about separation and all about the journey to unification? So that really started to change my view of Chiron. But now with the story of La Llorona, what happened for me was that the story's been changed a lot, but the version that Clarissa talks about is how there's a woman who is always by water, by the river, and you can hear her crying. And her tears are because her children are gone. They've either washed away in the river or they're drowned. But she's the one who threw them in the river. So she's heartbroken, but she's the one who caused the problem. And she got her children from a like a deputé, a debutante, somebody that is in a hierarchy of royalty, and that this masculine figure abandoned her. And in her sorrow, she got rid of her children because they were a reminder of this person. And the guy's gone. And now she is stuck reliving this nightmare of her being the one who offed her children. And so what the full meaning is, and I'm probably totally butchering it, you really got to read the book, or at least her version of La Llorona, um, is that the representation is of the masculine, that if we have the divine masculine, like Chiron, if we have a masculine polarity within us that is balanced, that is directive, that is able to be a safety and a provision for the expansion of our soul and for us to have an emotional experience. That's the whole thing about being grounded when you're triggered, that you're having this masculine thought of observation and perspective and holding yourself steady instead of just reacting to whatever's upsetting you. That's what the divine masculine represents. And so in the story of La Llorona, it is a story of when we don't have the divine masculine, when the inner masculine, when our thoughts are not in a positive way, they're not helpful, then that's what actually messes us up. And part of how you bring this story into real life is that us, especially as women who are independent, who have estranged relationships with our fathers, we have changed the polarity of our masculine energy to be the masculine for ourselves. But the problem is that it's kind of just like masking what the emotion underneath that protection is. And so then energetically within us, this river becomes toxic. We are toxic energetically because there's actually no outlet for this energy to disperse. And so we're stuck on this repetitive loop of our sabotage, throwing the children into the river, and the judgment because you're the one who threw your children in the river, and then the sadness that comes of it, and then trying to correct, but it never ends. Like, that's the story. She never ends. So La Llorona is an entity that people say, like, she was a real person and you can hear her crying. And I actually have a client that's from Mexico and she's in her 70s. And I asked her about La Llorona. She goes, "Oh, I know about La Llorona." She goes, "I don't know." Like, what she told me is that she is a woman who lost her children. And anytime that you go near water, you can hear her cry. But the original story that's in its fullest is a lot about rejection and shame, but the whole story of this woman's experience with the river, with the villages, with the man who left her, with her children, is all actually about ourselves. And when this clicked into place for me, I felt so much relief. And that's when I actually started to feel peace. After all these years, like 15 years of doing this inner work since I got diagnosed with PTSD when binge eating stopped working, all this time, it now finally makes sense because what I did to myself is, especially with my Chiron placement, the dark side of it for me is that when I learned about how the mind body works, and in fact, I have a playlist on YouTube where I go through, similar to this, all the books that helped me understand the mind body connection to get me out of pain from my old neck injury. And they are The Divided Mind by Dr. John Sarno, You Can Heal Your Body by louise hay, Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza, Molecules of Emotion by Dr. Candace Pert, and then Emotion Code by Dr. Bradley Nelson. So I've shared how I have come to understand how the mind body works and how I applied the concepts in those books to get my body into a state of ease, which now it's getting into a magnificent state of magnetism because I'm able to work out more consistently without flares, and my eating is really good. It's moderate. So when I felt that peace, I was so happy because it really helps us make sense of what the inner work is all about. The inner work is alchemy. It's able to take a negative experience and turn it into wisdom. And that at the end of the day is the creation story before the patriarchy, before the Hebrew God required Asherah and all of the people who believed in her to be murdered. And what upsets me is, like, can, like, you hear what I'm saying? Our precious religion is based off of genocide. And we're at this time with the outer planets moving that exterior belief system isn't going to hold up anymore. And as long as we keep looking at what's happening in the Fertile Crescent as that's the bad guy, that's the good guy, I'm going to side with the good guy, then we're not actually evolving out of that time period, because parts of the Bible are true that we are in the time of revelation. Uranus moving into Gemini is the great awakener. We're going to be able to see more and more beyond the veil because we're going to get more and more bullshit with the deep fakes and the fake news and people using images from video games to say this is an image in the Fertile Crescent of a bomb being dropped. Like, we have to be so aware that what we're seeing with our screens is probably not going to be true. And the real reason that the US might actually go to war isn't for the reasons that you think. And we rely on the evolutionary astrologers to make that known to us. And I'll actually put the link into an evolutionary astrologer who has a 4-hour video about war and Uranus and what we're facing right now. That's like $20. So I'll put that in the comments on YouTube also. But I wanted to share that with you from the perspective of the inner work, because when we really can use our chart to grab a hold of our masculine energy, our thought energy, and our doing actions, then we're able to recreate the experience that we're having by taking aligned action. And in the Fat Life, you can get on the wait list for the second round that starts on September 8th. In the Fat Life, we're using eating and exercise as the container for the inner alchemy. So we pay attention to how we're feeling about food and dieting and our body. We're paying attention to what we're thinking about our body, thinking about exercising. We're focusing on the body and the food because the food directly relates to emotion, the feminine energy, and the body and working out relate directly to the masculine energy. So when you have the purpose of using your archetypes from your natal chart, using the experiences that you have from your childhood, using the inner child and nervous system regulation, all funneled into eating and exercise, it's like lightning speed because we're working on all three levels: thoughts, feelings, and actions. And so this is one of the books that has really tipped the scale for me into feeling peace more often than not, being more coherent more often than not, and being able to be what Abraham, who channels through Esther Hicks, says, the blended human. That not only are we going to be able to listen to our intuition more and more, more and more of us are going to be able to receive intelligence from the non-physical realms, the intuition that we had through Asherah and lots of other goddesses before the Hebrew God required all of that to be suppressed so that it could have control. And that is the bottom line premise of all of the issues that we're having right now. But this is the end of time. It's the end of that time, which means, especially with what we have about quantum time travel through simulation that the White House just told us about, I'll find that link too for you. It really truly is the spiritual war between thoughts and feelings and actions on the individual level, mostly the thoughts and feelings of the inner alchemy, up against what can be done in the quantum realm with our governments. That's a lot, right? Powerful stuff. It's a great time to be alive. I will share with you another book the next time I do a video, and that will be really fabulous, but I don't know which one it is. I'm trying to go in order of what I read. The next one is, I think it's The Mothers, that is about all the transformative character of the feminine / the feminine godhead. Okay, goodbye.